Probably some of you have heard of Pokémon GO. All right. Ebu is Senior Product Manager for Niantic Labs. And for those of you who know Khaled, I think Khaled worked for you. And when he invited, he said he's willing to come and talk. I checked him with Khaled, and Khaled goes, "Oh, he's fantastic. You should get him to talk." So he's going to give a talk about creation of planet-scale shared augmented reality, as you can see in this title. But I think one of the key things that everyone wants to know is they went to 500 million downloads in how long time? Nearly instantaneously. So I teach the network games class, and I always tell people, if you create a really, really big hit, you may have a problem. So hopefully some of that's in your talk.
A lot of it's in talk.
That's a good talk then, because if you create a super fantastic, successful game, and you get way more players than you thought, how many did you think you would get?
50 times less than...
50 times less. Okay. So if you guess wrong, things can go wrong, and so Ed will let you go.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Well, thank you all for coming here today. Also, I think after the talk, probably will stick around a bit and see a bit of what you guys do. I've also brought my associates here. Steve is a senior engineer who works on Ingress, which we'll also talk about in the course of this talk. So I wanted to talk to you today about what we believe are the first generation of truly mass market augmented reality games. Now, augmented reality in a lot of the parlance of the industry before Pokémon GO became kind of on everybody's mind, was focused. The discussion was mostly focused around kind of novel, technologically challenging hardware devices that would integrate graphics as an overlay on top of the real world. I want to, through the course of this talk today, convince you that as awesome and as immersive as those experiences will be, that the data, the shared data state that is shared between all the players playing a single coherent game is as important to the creation of this idea of an augmented reality as the immersive visual experience. And so to do that, I'm going to talk about two of our products, both of which Steve and I worked on in the past few years. So the first is Ingress, which has been around for about 4 years now. That's coming right up on its 4th anniversary. It was a product that we created inside Google back when mobile phones, people were still getting an idea of how to leverage all these sensors and data capabilities of mobile phones to actually create new, different, interesting experiences, right? To move games beyond kind of the trick of using the touchscreen for Angry Birds, is something actually that leveraged everything inside the phone. The second game I'll talk about is Pokémon GO, which, as was mentioned, has more than 500 million downloads and was just released this summer. So, for the uninitiated, both of these games are massively multiplayer, location-based games that you play on your mobile phone. And the key element, the thing that binds it all together, is that they overlay a single consistent reality on top of the real world that all the players share. So, if I change or affect a game element in the game, either in Ingress or Pokémon GO, that state is then reflected in short order on the game client, on the mobile phone of the person next to me, and on the mobile phone of the person next to her. The actions that somebody takes are globally reflected throughout all the entire single coherent global space. So why should you care about a video game? Right? I want to start out to give a bit of context about why Niantic chose to make these kind of games. And what we're trying to do. I think that's actually best embodied by this quote that the Surgeon General gave a few weeks ago. So the Surgeon General is in this midst of a year-long campaign to get us out and about and walking, right? To actually not only think about going and taking a walk occasionally for the health benefits, but how to structure our lives, how to structure our communities around walking so that we actually live healthier, longer lives. And I think it's really interesting. The quote that he says here is, the most common pathology we have in America is not heart disease, it's not diabetes, it's not cancer, but it's isolation and loneliness. what he's saying here is that the root of our problems with physical activity are not the pathologies that are caused by the lack of physical activities. It's just the root cause is actually our lack of interconnectedness with others. So he goes on to say, one of the interesting lessons that we can take from Pokemon Go is that technology can motivate people to action, especially when it's connected to other people. So this really gets at the heart of what Niantic is trying to do. We really believe that through technology, we can inspire people to actually go out and experience the real world, and to look up and understand the communities around them. We believe that people are healthier when they go outside, and in fact, that when they do it with others, this is mutually self-reinforcing. And so we knew all this was going to happen with Pokemon Go. And we knew it because we've lived it for the past 4 years. We've lived it from Ingress. So this is an Ingress event in Tokyo in July 2016, right on the eve of Pokemon Go launching in Japan. And but this is a major Ingress event in Tokyo where you can see several thousand people, not only from within Tokyo, but from all around Japan and all around Asia, and some people flew from elsewhere in the world, just to come to this event to play Ingress in the streets of Tokyo for an afternoon with friends and strangers. Imagine people traveling thousands and thousands of miles just to play a game with others, with a group of friends maybe that they brought along with them, or new people, for 3 or 4 hours. And I have to say that it feels truly incredible and a real privilege to be able to work on a product that has this kind of impact on people's lives, that inspires them to make social connections and to travel the world, to see new places and meet new people. And I feel particularly privileged to do this at a time when much of the industry is really really focused on getting people's head inside a virtual box, right? Not that there's anything wrong with those set of technologies, but at Niantic we really believe that there's something special to the in-person experience of seeing other people, other new locations, new communities in person. And so on Ingress alone in the past 4 years, of our millions of players, hundreds of thousands of them have actually turned out to events just like this. And they've shown up to these real-life events to both help throughout the world to play Ingress with others. And it turns out that the Surgeon General is right. So when you create a game where you and your friends can all inhabit the same fantastical universe of Pokemon, we've been able to inspire people to walk more than half of the way to Pluto. And that's just the end of August. I have not had the chance in the midst of all this craziness to actually recompute the number lately. And we know from Ingress that it's going to lead to much more than just walking, right? Every week we get dozens or hundreds of stories of people who've lost dozens or hundreds of pounds playing Ingress, getting outside, exercising. There are countless stories of people who met playing Ingress and end up married. And I think the one that I'm most proudest of is that there's a significant subset of people who write into us and say, I have crippling social anxiety. I barely was able to go outside and look up to, talk to other people until I started playing Ingress. And the community there helped me overcome, some elements of my social anxiety, and becoming a much happier and more fulfilled person as a result. So how is all this accomplished? At the most basic level, it starts with a mobile phone app that connects the player to both the world around them, as well as an alternate vision of the world. So the world around them is the streets and buildings underlying that are the real world map data underlying the game experience. And an alternate vision of the world is overlaid on top. So in Ingress, on the left, you see these blue and green, we'll call them portals, and get back to this. On the right, in Pokemon Go, we see this fantastical Pidgey overlaid on top of the real world. And again, the key thing is that all the data that is displayed in this world is consistent for all the users who are playing the game at the same time. So let's start with Ingress. When you download Ingress, your phone becomes window into an alternate reality surrounding us. The first thing that you do is you join one of two teams, either blue, symbolized by the resistance, the resistance symbolized by blue, or the enlightened, symbolized by green. Next, you'll see portals. Those are real-world, publicly accessible locations, like the Eiffel Tower, that are highlighted on the map in the color of the team that currently controls that portal. So these blue, these blue spiky globs are controlled by the resistance. These green ones are controlled by the enlightened. Now, if you're willing to get up and go visit them, you can go and capture them for your team, and then begin to help your team take over the entire world, so long as you keep moving. So the key game mechanic here is that as you walk around, you collect these little globs of light. We call them XM globs. And so as you walk along, you gather energy, and that energy is the core game mechanic that is used on the portals that helps you take them over. As you capture these portals, you can begin to link them together. And once you link 3 portals together in a triangle, they actually begin to create a control field. That's what you can start to see on the left here, up on the top here. The enlightened team is beginning to create triangles of control, controlling swaths of the Earth. And by building successively larger fields, you can control not only neighborhoods, as is happening here, but start to control cities or countries, or even oceans and continents. So Ingress is a truly globe-spanning game that lives on a single coherent instance. And nothing shows that off better than the ability to create these mega fields that cover large swaths or fractions of the Earth's surface. Now, let's begin to go into the technical content of this talk. So consider for a second, right, the contention and latency constraints that have to be met in order to make this happen, right? The minute that somebody connects that field on the right, everybody from San Diego to Milwaukee to Vancouver has to see it affect their game, right? You have this huge coupling between these massive world-scale problems that then filter down to many users, pretty much the entire game instance, all playing on the same game field. Likewise, in Pokemon Go, the game again centers on a representation of the player's surrounding environment. So the curated points of interest, like the Eiffel Tower, that we used as portals in Ingress, have been repurposed in Pokemon Go as gyms. These big monolithic structures in the distance, for example, were Pokestops. These little blue cubes that is in the foreground. Now, we inverted the resource model in Pokemon Go. So instead of collecting resources on the way to the points of interest and then expending the resources at the point of interest, instead, now we collect our resources at the points of interest and expend them as we go from destination to destination. You gather resources from Pokestops, you use these resources to catch Pokemon who spawn in the world as you move from place to place. The objective is to catch these Pokemon, train and level them, and then use them to take over gyms for your team. Again, the state of the world is consistent, around you is consistent across everyone's game clients who's currently playing. So as you take over a game for a team, this is an example of a gym battle, which you would use to take over a gym for your team. Once you convert it to your team's color, that state has to be reflected in the game clients of everybody around you, up to about 1 kilometer away. So both games operate on this self-reinforcing loop that encourages travel at the top, continued movement as you navigate towards destination, and then once you're at a destination, social interaction. Our destinations reflect shared state among all players in the game. The mechanics to operate on those locations are coupled to walking from location to location. And so we'll go over some of the key pieces of data and problems that we have to solve in order to enable each piece of this loop to operate individually. And then we'll dive a bit into the technologies that Niantic has used to solve some of these problems. So the exon data and the Pokemon spawn data are extremely numerous. And in order to provide a consistent experience worldwide, they need to be populated across the entire globe. The population of this data has to be contextually aware. For example, we want the exon and Pokemon to spawn in places that are eminently walkable. And we want to take, in particular for Pokemon, for the spawns to take some contextual clues from the location that they're in. So, for example, if you want a kind of Pokemon that's associated with a dry, sandy environment to show up more often in Arizona than in Seattle. In order to properly tune this data, we need a framework that allows us to rapidly iterate on massive amounts of data over and over as we tune the algorithms. Second, we need some sort of way to mutate millions of players worth of data simultaneously. You know, when you're running, hopefully one day some of you will run, a very large-scale game yourselves. And if you're doing that from the server side, you'll monitor a variety of statistics, like latency, or queries per second, or mutations per second, or whatever, right? Our favorite metric that we pay attention to is the PBPS, the Pokeballs per second metric. And it's relevant because it's kind of an end-to-end test to make sure like the entire system is working end-to-end, right? Like, unless you can find Pokemon, you can't throw the Pokeball, right? But more importantly, every Pokeball thrown has to get deducted from the player's inventory somewhere, right? Each of these, each Pokeball that's thrown represents a mutation. And the number is high and like ludicrously high enough that it would destroy any singly homed relational database management system, right? So those of you who have taken databases, like, if you set up like a MySQL box under your desk, right? Doesn't matter, how expensive a machine you purchase from Dell, like, we will destroy it, right? So we need to have some sort of solution that allows us to scale millions of players of data operating on a single database at the same time. And finally, we need to accurately geolocate our players. Note that the requirements here are actually much more stringent than your typical road navigation application. Whereas in road navigation, you have the benefit of large distances over time and priors that you're actually on the road. That doesn't help you when you are walking through the middle of a grassy field looking for more pigeons. So how do we solve these problems? Each of these requirements is satisfied by a particular set of technologies that is now publicly available. To satisfy our need to rapidly iterate on and change our geodata, we use a framework called Google Cloud Data Flow. And so what is this? It's a version of MapReduce that was developed internally. If you've ever read any academic papers that refer to something called Flume Java, it refers to a Google project to expand MapReduce to be usable in a well-designed, well-architected, well-engineered way by a wide number of software engineers. So the original versions of MapReduce are kind of finicky, right? You'd have to program very carefully and think very carefully about which stages of your pipeline you would map in, how would you do all the maps together in an efficient way, then serialize that data together, move it to the shuffle step, figure out how you optimally shuffle, and then figure out how to reduce. Instead, Cloud Data Flow allows you to think in abstract programming units that represent parallel functions that you want to perform in your data, such as parallel aggregation or parallel mapping. You just define a set of building block functions of this sort without having to worry about the interior traffic control management or combining for MapReduce steps. Then you push these functions over to Google. Google then is able to rearrange your parallel functions into an optimal pipeline for MapReduce, and then automatically provisions and scales a bunch of machines in the cloud for you to run your entire pipeline. so that you don't actually have to manage any machines to run massive data flows. As a result, we could rapidly iterate on our spawning algorithms in a way that would not be possible if we were just trying to constantly mutate one giant file or constantly trying to rewrite a relational database management system. Because the pipeline components here are abstracted at a data transformation level, it was really easy to mix and match different functions as we iterated on the data. So, for example, I could come in around 10 a.m., talk about how the latest talk about the team and the engineers that the latest set of data doesn't look quite right yet. That we would expect spawns to appear in certain places, but they're not. We could tune the algorithm a bit, and by lunchtime, thanks to this massively scaling parallel data processing system that Google provides, we're able to iterate extremely quickly. Next, in order to mutate millions of players' data simultaneously in a way that's efficient, we use a NoSQL cloud service called Google Cloud Data Store. So these differ from relational database management systems, again, if you've taken databases, because they don't require table-wide locks. And so long as you can deal with the kind of constraints on consistency that provides, then you can scale extremely widely without ever having to buy more boxes or provision new hardware. In fact, the same set of APIs that we use to develop Pokémon GO among a few dozen people are the exact same set of calls that we can now use at immense scale on Google Cloud Data Store. And finally, we need accurate responsive geolocation. The way we achieve this is to perform sensor fusion using advanced machine learning models on the client so that we can provide the most accurate and responsive experience for our players for the particular use case that location-based games require. The next component in our loop is our destination. How do we find it? Where is it? How do we where is it relative to us? We need a few things for that. So the first thing we need is a scalable, consistent, real-time geospatial query. What does all that mean? So in practice, what it means is that when I open up my phone and I look around, and I look around the universe of Pokémon GO or the universe of Ingress, I see a variety of sites controlled either by the blue or green team or by the teams in Pokémon GO. Maybe there's some Pokemon there, right? That query then has to constantly refresh and update in real time to update the world so that you have a fresh view of what is happening. It means that anytime somebody changes the world around them, within seconds, everybody within a 1 kilometer radius actually sees that change occur in their client. Second, we need a set of destinations themselves. These are locations that need to be publicly accessible and walkable, but ideally are also interesting and historically relevant landmarks that players will connect to and remember at a visceral level. And finally, we need to render a representation of the road and walkways map. Unlike typical mobile navigation applications, it needs to be rendered in 3D rather than 2D so that it can be visually attractive and consistent with the theming and overall product presentation of the client. So we accomplish these objectives with a few sets of technologies and data. So to accomplish the real-time geospatial queries, we built custom query logic on top of scalable containerized instances on Kubernetes cluster. What does all that mean? Okay, so if you worked at Google a few years back, when you wrote a program that you wanted to deploy at scale, and you wanted to deploy it on one of Google's massive data centers, you didn't call somebody up and say, assign me machines 1 through 1,000, and I will SSH into each one and manage each one individually, and then put my program on it and serve the traffic to people. That's not what happened. Instead, there's a program called Borg that was essentially an operating system for a data center. And what Borg did was allow Google data centers to run at extremely high utilization. Right? The number of cycles and RAM and hard drive wasted in the data centers was relatively low because there was this traffic control program called Borg that you just specified, I want X amount of hardware, X amount of hard drive, I want X amount of Y amount of CPU, and Z amount of RAM. And it would optimally find and bin pack all the programmer's requests in the cluster to optimally serve the desired instance programs. The programs all live in what are called containers. And for those who are unfamiliar, you can essentially regard containers as bare bones isolated Linux instances that achieve isolation at the operating system level rather than at a virtual machine interface level. And so instead of emulating like all the hardware interfaces, like the network card, access to the hard drive, etc., containers just cut you off at a single Linux file root, and the amount of overhead necessary, CPU and RAM overhead necessary to stand up a new container on a machine is much, much smaller than the overhead necessary to stand up a virtual machine. The result is a highly flexible, scalable architecture where we can mix and match our custom services with publicly available containers and co-locate them on the machines as we desired to achieve the latency characteristics necessary for this custom querying. So Borg, that piece of operating system, that data center operating system software, is now publicly available as an open source project, but provided by Google called Kubernetes. And Google also provides a service that we can pay for called Google Container Engine, where they will run Kubernetes on a set of machines that they provision for you, so that you can have your own private cluster, and you can spin up whatever jobs that you want to run on it. And so Kubernetes is essentially like a mini Google data center in a box, right? It turns out that Pokémon GO actually runs on the world's largest Kubernetes instance ever. The next thing that we need is a bunch of points of interest. And the way that we obtained these was for the first couple of years of Ingress's life, we built out an amazing data set of the world's most interesting foot-accessible public locations. And the way that we did this is that we solicited the submission of these locations from our players in Ingress. They actually wanted to make the game better, and so they sent us their locations. And after manually vetting about 5 million plus of them, we put them into the game. These form the core data set for both Ingress as well as Pokémon GO. And finally, we need a representation of the underlying streets and walkways and buildings to orient our users and navigate them to destinations of the game. We achieve this using a custom map tile rendering engine that we build into our clients, and we'll speak a bit later on client architecture. Finally, when we get to the Pokestop or gym or portal, we typically want to act on it in some way that's visible to other players. We might want to place a lure on a Pokestop so that other people, ourselves and others, can reap the benefits of that lure. Or we might want to battle our Pokemon to take it over for our team, or battle using XMPs and resonators to take it over, for our team, except in Ingress. So the problems here differ from the previous data store problem. Before I was talking about millions of players all trying to throw Pokeballs at Pokebucks, right? That's a different problem than a lot of players all trying to operate on the same gym or the same Ingress portal at the same time. That creates a different set of contention problems that have to be dealt with in a way that is not trivially horizontally scalable. And then finally, after all, this is actually a game, right? We need to present an attractive cross-platform interface at these locations that seamlessly integrates both 2D and 3D user interface elements that preserve this user sense of belief, disbelief, that they're actually battling their Pokemon in a world where Pokemon exist, or firing their XMPs, or deploying the resonators in a world where these portals are being taken over. And we need that user interface framework to be rapidly iterable in a cross-platform manner so that we're not writing everything twice. So we have accomplished the first objective using our NoSQL data store layer, which we know can scale to millions of GeoEntities around the world being mutated at once. Except we layer on top of it, we combine it with our custom query engines built on top of Google Container Engine. And finally, to achieve the attractive 3D interface in Pokemon Go in a way that we only need to write it once for both Android and iOS, we leverage the Unity 3D game engine, which I believe many of you here are familiar with. This allows us to integrate both the 3D information, which is key because we're, after all, producing a game that operates in a facsimile of the real world, as well as attractive 2D interface tools. So let's put all these technologies together on one slide. On the left, we have our client, written in C# on top of a Unity 3D game engine, which also contains our client-side logic for querying the servers for map and tile data. The client talks to the Niantic server logic hosted on Google Container Engine in the world's largest Kubernetes deployment, comprising tens of thousands of CPU cores. The mobile client can induce writes to both the player and geodata, which is then deconflicted and pushed to the NoSQL data store, served from Google Cloud Data Store. And occasionally we perform batch jobs on the Cloud Data Store objects using MapReduce on Google Cloud Data Flow service. So with that understanding of our architecture out of the way, I want to talk for a minute about scaling. And so I think the best way to actually speak about how well this architecture eventually scaled is to walk you through how the launch went. So we finalized the client early in the July 4th weekend, and July 4th happened to be a Monday this year, so we actually were able to let the team go and enjoy fireworks and barbecues, etc., with their families before we actually got into the thick of it on Tuesday. So we came back and we soft launched late Tuesday afternoon, July 5th, into Australia and New Zealand as a precursor to our actual launch in America the day after. So this is the point at which I admit to being the guy who wrote the initial resource estimates for our friends at Google, trying to figure out how much we should provision the container engine and data store services that we depend on them for. And I thought that we did our homework in a reasonable way, right? We looked at the growth curves of typical top-notch mobile games, and we knew that we had, hopefully it wasn't that much of a degree of hubris, but we knew that we had a great intellectual property IP on our hands, as well as what we believed was a very solid game. And so we looked at what the growth curves of top-tier games over the first month looked like. And we came up with a number that was our baseline for what we thought our overall usage by the end of the first month would be. We then built in some safety margin and said there would be a ludicrous 5x number on top of this number that we would actually make sure that Google was prepared for and was much more popular than we thought. And so this is how it actually ended up turning out. So, so the orange line is my prudent initial estimate based on what the growth curves of normal mobile games look like in the first month. Normal top-tier mobile games look like in the first month. The red line was the estimated worst case, of 5x. And the green line is what actually happened. So I knew that we had something really special on our hands when, within the first few hours of our release, just in Australia and New Zealand, which we expected to comprise less than 5% of our total eventual worldwide traffic, we had blown by the initial worldwide provisioning, and we're well on our way to blow the stack on our 5x provisioning. And so this is the point at which I have to actually really thank our friends at Google, because it's a testament to both the scalability of their systems as well as the robustness of our code that they never actually had to peek inside our code base at all, right? they could simply scale their underlying services, and we could work out the occasional scaling bug in our code, and we could grow steadily to the point where 2 weeks after our launch in the United States, we were able to launch in Japan. So I'm proud to say that there's actually several n-squared-like problems to solve in the containerized infrastructure stack that I spoke about earlier. But at no point did anything fundamental actually restrict our growth. All the latency and stability concerns that you might have seen in the first couple of weeks of playing Pokemon Go were actually more prosaic concerns that, for scaling that are typical of any service that has to get up to a high amount of QPS. A typical thing that we would do is see that we have some sort of latency problem. We'd do a thread dump to go and go look at all stack traces of all currently running threads, and we see that all of them were hung up on some silly mutex somewhere. We beat up the mutex log with a 3-line patch, and thanks to Google Container Engine, we could redeploy the entire server stack in a matter of a few minutes to observe whether we beat out the problem. And so this is no different from the scaling bugs and problems that any service encounters try to spin up to scale. The only difference from other people who have to beat down these kind of bugs is that we did so essentially on top of a rocket ship. We knew that we were riding an immense wave of momentum and interest in Pokemon Go the minute that we launched in Australia and New Zealand, and we wanted to roll out to the world as quickly as we feasibly could, so that we could, because we knew that if we wanted the maximum number of people to experience Pokemon Go, we wanted to do so when the momentum and media were hot. So we launched in the United States on the 6th, and then in the week after, we rolled out to most of European markets as well as Canada, and then to Japan the week after. And by the end of about 1 month, we've gotten through our initial launch targets, including in South America and Southeast Asia. So with the Pokemon Go launch behind us, I want to talk a bit about Niantic's future. We believe we have conclusively demonstrated that augmented reality is as much about the shared world state overlaid on top of the real world and combined social interactions as it is about immersive hardware devices. We know that those immersive hardware devices they're coming, that talented people are working extremely hard on them and to make them a reality. But the market reality for Niantic right now is that what everybody has in their pocket is a cell phone. But even within those constraints we can make, people believe that there's an awesome, fantastical universe overlaid on top of the real world. And the key point is that they believe it is because everybody else around them believes it too. In the present, we can drive on that point with camera and gyro-assisted augmented reality, like we do in the battle system on the right, but that's just a glimpse up to where the future can go. In the meantime, we also believe that we can innovate in alternative complementary game modes that bind you to the virtual world while keeping you fully immersed in the real one. So that's the goal of the Pokemon Go Plus, our wearable device shown on the left. It buzzes and flashes when Pokemon and Pokestops are nearby, and you can catch or collect them with a press of the button. So this is definitely not as complex a game as the one that you can play on your mobile phone, but we see it as an entirely, truly complementary mode that allows you to play the game from a different perspective. So with our massive player base and proven leadership in the field, we expect that to continue to innovate and drive novel hardware integrations. And we have every intention of pursuing the long-term investments that are necessary to push forward and pushing forward with every product that we make to get closer and closer to a future where you actually have those awesome immersive hardware devices integrated fully with a game like Pokemon Go, where everybody shares a single coherent, consistent world. So going back to the beginning, we really believe that Niantic's products will bring tangible benefit to people's lives and above and beyond their mere entertainment value. We really believe it'll get them and their families outside walking together, living longer and healthier lives. We hope to continue to forge and strengthen interpersonal relationships both with the people you take on those journeys as well as the ones you'll meet along the way. And finally, we'll reintegrate people back into their communities, rebinding our social fabric, and inspiring people to improve their outside environments and the worlds around them. So with that, there is an ulterior motive here, which is if you are interested, we have need for both awesome client and server engineers. So please apply to universities@nianticlabs.com. Even if you go to our website, right now it says 2 years of experience or more. I'm coming to USC precisely because I know that you guys are awesome and that I've worked with your alumni in the past, and that you guys have both the algorithmic capability as well as the passion and drive to work in on awesome games. And we would love to hopefully have some of you work with us. And so I want to say a few things. So I want to thank Professor Naida for allowing us to present here and to talk to you all. And our CEO, John Hankey, makes a point every time that he talks to thank the engineering team because they slept very little during the month of July to get this game out to you and the rest of the world. So I would very much like to thank you. And thank you all for coming and letting me speak.
Are there any questions? Actually, I have a question. Sure. Does Niantic Labs have any sort of game plan as it relates to the emergence of virtual reality in the console setting? Since it's traditionally been very, very focused on mobile devices, is there going to be any venture into other experiences that might involve a console?
I unfortunately can't talk too much about possible partnerships or products. I think speaking generally, our focus has been on the real world, right, and getting people out and about into the real world. And so we do feel like there's a set of technologies. They're not quite mature enough yet, but that lead to more immersive blends of the real world and the virtual world that are more portable and at least right now, like HoloLens, operates within a room itself. So I guess I would say, the most important, whether we would take on such a project would be a question of whether it fulfills our mission of getting people outside, right? Getting people to meet each other. Maybe there's a way that those technologies can be used to accomplish such a goal. Not sure yet.
Okay.
How do you guys deal with feature creep, or having lots of ideas but not enough bandwidth?
So I think it's important to think about the internal processes for organization and how you set them up. This is something that we put a lot of thought into as we spun out of Google, because at that point we had a chance to become a startup again and think about how do we want to organize ourselves as an engineering and product team to execute on actually getting a game out there, but not stifle creativity. And it's a pretty hard balance. And I think, at least as a manager, the way that I approach that is by giving people an investment in what they're doing, while working very closely with our product manager. So I manage the engineering side of things, and we have a product manager who sets the overall design and vision for the product named Tasso Nomura, who, yes, has the final say. Ultimately, there has to be somebody who says, the string in the client will be X, right? But still work with the rest of the team and incorporate their ideas and allow them to iterate and, think and maybe even code and demo future ideas. The thing that I always tell my engineers is that you need to feel free to occasionally run off and just try something, right? but be cognizant that your time is everybody's time, right? The minutes that you're putting into something that is not going to ship are minutes that the rest of the team could use your help on. And so if people feel truly passionate about the ideas that they have and can demonstrate quickly to the rest of the team and to the product manager that this is something that's feasible and it's going to work and it's going to be fun, then it does get integrated. But if it's not going to work, then you need to have the self-discipline to, you need to have the culture around you that says, failure is okay, and move on.
So according to the internet, Pokémon GO has had a big churn rate in the last couple of months. There are many reasons for it. Like few people find it way too easy, few people find it hard with the tracking system going, few people are bored because they don't see an end picture to that. So how do you tackle which group to go for? I mean, find solution for which group to maintain the retention rate?
So again, I can't talk too much about upcoming product features, but I can speak to the fact that we did conduct a closed beta before we launched, right? So before we launched during the spring, we rolled out the game to a select group of people who had put in their email addresses in Japan, Australia, New Zealand, and the United States. And there, from a game design and iteration perspective, we had a lot of freedom to blow up the entire world of data, delete everybody's data, start over again, try out different kinds of mechanics, different kinds of data, until things felt a lot closer to right. And I do remember, it's weird that things do start to become cohesive and gel together. I do remember a specific build where it was the set of mechanics and the loops actually began to click, and people really felt hey, we knew that there was a kernel of something here, but now everything is really working together, right? And there's no alternative for being able to test with a large number of people in a closed environment until we get that right.
What kind of strategies do you use to make sure that the scalability of your product and your features would be able to sustain whatever you were shooting for, whatever your goal was?
Right, so from an engineering perspective, right, the reason that we were able to take off like that in 2 weeks, right, was because we put a huge amount of thought and care into every piece of server code, knowing that it would need to scale to those kind of levels, right? If we wanted to eventually be as successful as we dreamed of, right? We built Pokemon Go on top of what we call our platform. So it's literally a segregated code base containing both client and server code that powers the underlying data store operations and spatial query and core network layer that is separate from the application layer, right? So the application layer is things like throw a Pokeball, deduct Pokeball from inventory. And so we wanted to make that core platform layer as scalable as possible because we wanted to make sure that we could leverage it not only for Pokemon Go, but for future games as well. And so we put a lot of thought and care into making it, and actually did the math to make sure that it was scale. Product features are harder, right? And so I think when you operate in a single consistent world, you have to think about how product features will scale, not just among a few players, like your typical Call of Duty map or whatever, it's 32 players, right? But among dozens of players, hundreds of players, thousands of players, all operating in the same area. It's not an easy challenge from a game design perspective.
How do you curate the 5 million plus points of interest? Is there any algorithm to that?
Back when we were in Google, we built up that entire database, and can't talk necessarily about the algorithms, but there was also a good deal of human input as well. And sometimes there's no alternative for somebody saying that is a picture of your cat.
How many years from years of man hours or time from initial conception to release do you think Pokemon Go took?
I would say, I can't answer specifically, because obviously it was,
Was it started in like 2012, right after Ingress? Was there a team working on this?
no, I mean, I can't specify the exact date that it started within Google, but I can say that like, in earnest, the real, like the meat of the development, I would say like, you know, the vast majority of the code that you actually see in the clients on the servers today, happened as soon as we spun out of Google, which is about a year ago. And so the team has worked insanely hard. And for that matter, it is a relatively small team, right? You know, the number of people who were managing this thing, right? The number of people who essentially spent all of July locked up indoors was about 4 people plus our CTO. Right? And it is a testament to the fact that, like, with that's the server engineering team. Mind you, there's many other people who assisted on the client engineering team, and you know, worked insanely hard before that, you know, July 5th release date of the initial client to get the client up and going. But in those first couple of weeks, you know, the core server team was just a small number of people, and that's possible because we built our services on these scalable data store and compute layers that we didn't have to worry about, right? That, you know, we could work with Google to get them to scale their underlying services so that we could concentrate on what we did best.
That's amazing. Any other questions? All right, thank you.
Okay.